From Inside the Birds with our other friend, Adam Kaplan, as well. Our good friend, Geoff Mosher, joins the program. What's going on, Mosher? How you doing?
I'm great, Marc. How are you?
I'm great. I'm better now that the Eagles apparently are, I don't know if this is a football term. I don't want to speak over our audience's head. An eyelash under the cap now? What's going on here? Are they even under a cap? What's going on?
Is there a cap anymore? I mean, does the cap really exist if you can give out so much money and there's technically being a cap, but you can push it all till till when you and I are going to have Kane and maybe be 6 feet under? No such thing of a cap. No, the things are good for the Eagles. And I mean, first of all, how excited are you for the start free agency? It's going to begin at 4:00. I can't wait.
I have
it's
no
gonna
idea.
Be so exciting.
I don't know what's going to happen.
No idea.
I can't take it. I never have anxiety, but I'm feeling it a little bit. It is insane. This legal tampering period has just become the period.
Well, I got to tell you, there's something to be said for being the one team out of 32 that doesn't cheat. I tell you.
Now all of a sudden we're all about our moral compass.
Exactly.
So right now we're just watching the Eagles try to get under the cap as much as possible. They extend Brandon Graham. They take advantage. They restructure Brandon Brooks. They look at a restructure with Jake Elliott, their kicker, which just seems weird, but they did it. Like all these different moves that they're wheeling and dealing. Is this just a bold effort to get under that cap, or is there actually going to be something to benefit here? Like, is there a signing on the way, or is all this strictly a numbers game right now?
Well, here's how it works. A lot of people always say, man, that Howie Roseman is a genius because he figured out a way to get the Eagles at the cap or under every year. And without taking any credit away from Howie, I always like to remind the people that he doesn't have a choice. It's kind of something all 32 general managers absolutely have to do by 4:00 of the new league year. So the issue with Howie, and it's been talked about for quite a while, the issue with the team and the cap is they were so over the cap, Marc. You know of all the restructuring and the wheeling and dealing they've had to do just to become cap compliant. So, I don't have the exact numbers. Reporters, there are some websites that give you some information, but the only people who know where the Eagles cap situation are the Eagles in the NFL. All right. And obviously at 4:00, they'll be compliant. And obviously once they can get Zach Ertz off the books, which I imagine will happen, that's even more money that's going to free up. And they can still make some moves depending on what they do with Derek Burnett or whoever. You don't have to free up that much money because, as the Eagles have shown you time and time again, Marc, if you want to sign a free agent right now, you can offer him a decent amount of money, but just backload the contract so that year one is not very expensive. But I sense, and just watching how they're doing and talking, is that, they're not going to be – I mean, look, we already know that a lot of these guys have already agreed to deals, and the Eagles are sitting it out. I think they're the only team that really hasn't had a announced signing of anybody so far. They're going to be spectators more than they're going to be active participants. It doesn't mean they're not going to sign anybody. They need cornerback help. They need linebacker help. They need a quarterback. I mean, they have Jalen Hurts, but nobody ever has just one quarterback on the roster. And even though I expect that they'll probably draft one at some point in the draft, I don't know, 6 overall, but just a developmental kid. Right. They need a veteran backup. So, of course, they're going to have some money under the cap to be able to spend, and I anticipate they'll do that. But I know people are getting very itchy and hoping that some of these names go off the board. Then why aren't the Eagles in on it? It's just not. First of all, sorry, I'm very long-winded here.
No, by all means.
If you look at the quality of free agent this year that is signing for a lot of big money, these are guys. I mean, the top $5 figure amounts, total dollars. You got Bud Dupree, you got Trey Hendrickson, you've got the other Leonard Floyd, you got Corey Linsley, and the fifth one, Joe Thuney, who went to the Chiefs, right? I think of all those 5, none of them have made a Pro Bowl. Linsley was all-pro. Weird to be all-pro but not make the Pro Bowl. But so he's a good player. He's a center. The Eagles were obviously not going to invest heavily on the offensive line because they're already invested heavily there. The 2 pass rushers I mentioned are 3-4 outside linebackers. The Eagles run a 4-3. So they weren't going to be – this is not a class for them. They need a corner. They need a linebacker. You're going to see guys who are released over the next week or two as cap casualties or teams moving on who are legit and decent enough to play, but not expensive, That's the kind of secondary market that I think that the Eagles are going to try to capitalize on. It's bargain hunting, really.
Geoff Mosher joining us from Inside the Birds podcast. Great to have you on, Geoff. I thought you were going to go a different direction when you talked about Howie Roseman and getting under the cap and him being a genius and restructuring these deals. The direction I thought you were going to go was, who's giving out these deals in the first place? And that's Howie Roseman. So, I mean, is there any foresight that when Howie's signing these guys through the deal, he's thinking in the back of his mind, I've done a lot of these lately. We might have to restructure this one a couple years down the line.
So the big issue for Howie is that he didn't really have a choice. I know some people say that you should just mass cut these guys and try to start over. The problem is that because of the restructures that they had already done, a lot of the guys that we're talking about have large cap numbers in the future, right? And so if you were to cut them right now, that gets drained into your current cap. So they needed to get less money. You can't have guys, you can't cut guys and have it cost you more money on the books, because then you're going in the opposite direction.
Right.
So it really left him no choice to do what he do what he did. I will say though, I mean, I think he didn't have to do it for everybody, and I think there was some risk, a lot of risk involved in how it's done. I mean, the cap will go up theoretically. I know everybody says the cap goes up, it's not going to be an issue. No, it still can be an issue. I mean, you have Darius Slay, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Graham, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson. That's 5 guys right there.
Fletcher Cox.
Fletcher Cox, who has a bit, right. If 3 of these guys are hurt this year in 2021, or just don't perform well, or aging sets in, you can't just cut them, because you're going to be taking massive, massive cap hits for 2022. And even though the cap will be rising, that's still dead cap money that could potentially be. And imagine if you had the worst case scenario of 4 or 5 of these guys not being able to play well. So it's not even really a cap thing. It's more like they have to be on the team. What are you going to do with them? You saw what happened with Alshon Jeffrey. His cap number got really big. They would have loved to have unloaded him, but then he got hurt. So you can't unload a player who's hurt. So they had to stick with him this past year, right? So at one point when he got healthy, they're like, my God, he makes this kind of money. He's got a cap figure that high. He's on the roster. We're going to have to try. We're going to play him to the stunted development of a guy like Travis Fulgham. So you have to hope now that you don't have 3 or 4 or 5 guys have that happen to them, and the team feel forced to have to play them because of the cap number.
I know you guys had talked about this before, but in terms of bringing in a quarterback, and you mentioning drafting a quarterback, and I think they will draft one in the later rounds, like you said, not at number 6, but in the later rounds. Was Jacoby Brissett ever a real thing here in Philadelphia?
I think so. I mean, it makes sense because of his connection to the coaching staff.
Sure.
I mean, Nick Sirianni and Patullo and the Indianapolis guys. And Adam Kaplan on our podcast reported that he knew that there was interest there. Now, when you report that, people, last year we reported that they were going to be all in on Byron Jones, the cornerback who signed with Miami. They absolutely were there. They were at there were couple teams at the finish line. Miami sealed the deal. It didn't happen. That doesn't mean the Eagles weren't interested, nor were they were very competitive. We were both told that they were there. Just Miami came up a little bit better. Plus, he wanted to play for Miami. You can't control that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, there was interest in Jacoby Brissett. He wound up signing with Miami. Go figure. So and then of course another guy who was connected to the coaching staff would be Tyrod Taylor from his time in LA with Steichen there. He's now with Houston. So we'll see. I mean, there's still some decent number of backup quarterbacks. There's Joe Flacco. We'll see what happens with him. Marcus Mariota is a guy that Eagles have been reportedly interested in, and I can see why. And if he gets cut by the Raiders, then all of a sudden you can do a negotiation with him and try to bring him in at a rate you want. But they will have to sign him back. That's what we can say, Mark. You can't go into the season with Jalen Hurts and then try to draft 2 rookies in the draft later rounds and say, hey, that's our quarterback room. That's just not going to work.
Maybe that'll be the quarterback competition for the number 2 spot that Nick Sirianni was referencing. Guys, I didn't mean the starter spot. What are you, crazy? The number 2 spot. All right, Zach Ertz. Let's get into this meat and potatoes here. So, I mean, again, I don't think you got to be a brainiac to figure this one out, though. So 2 of the top tight ends go to New England. That kind of helps the Eagles. Then there was a report out there from Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network saying that Zach Ertz doesn't even want a new deal right away with whatever team takes him on. So I'm getting Zach Ertz at a good price on the first year, knowing that I'm going to have to sign him long-term after that. How is he not traded already? What's the holdup in that regard?
Well, I think the holdup would be is that everybody does this. Everybody wants a player, but they don't want to give up much, right? And they'll find every excuse. Well, he's coming off an ankle surgery and he didn't have the greatest year. I know you guys have to get rid of him. I'll give you a 5th round. I'll give you something like that. Look, I had heard a couple of weeks ago that what Howie Roseman really wanted was a 3rd. Okay. Obviously, he hasn't gotten a 3rd, or else the trade probably would have been consummated by now. I would imagine that teams right now are trying to get at Ertz at a discount price. That's probably not going to happen either. So just like we saw Carson Wentz, right? Eventually, they got decent value in return for Wentz, and I imagine that Howie will hold. Howie doesn't have to trade him right now. He can hold out for as long as he wants. It's not a very good tight end draft after Kyle Pitts. There's a couple guys like Freiermuth from Penn State, but it's not considered a very deep tight end draft. And then free agency is not even over yet, so other people can lose out on someone that they're looking for. I think the Chargers make a lot of sense after losing Hunter Henry, and sure. We'll see. Zach's from California, but we'll see how it goes. But I tend to think that right now it's just got to be a better asking price.
How much does it help when a player is actually granted permission? And I always find this funny. They're granted the permission to find their own trade, to seek their own trade. How much does that make sense when it's still the Eagles that got to go, oh, yeah, we'll do that? How much does that make sense?
I think it can help in the regards that if you're just dealing with the Eagles and just the Eagles, you don't know, per se, Zach's mindset, what kind of contract he's willing to work on. If you talk to the agent and you're given that, which you're not allowed to do, unless given permission, then all of a sudden you can get an idea if you're an interested team on what we're looking at from he's owed $8 million this year. We only have 3. Can we give him 3 this year, 2 next? Can we spread it out? Are you amenable to that? Can we work on your, a restructure? Do you want to be with us for more than a year, or do you really want to be a free agent next year? So now I know that you can, so I think the agent can help fill in the blanks that the team doesn't care to do. The team's just like, here, have Zach Ertz, here, have whoever. They can't speak for Ertz then.
Yeah, it helps take away a layer, in other words. It helps take away a layer. So you're more so directly dealing with the player, at least with his agent and not the team. So, that makes sense. What did you guys make? What did you make, Geoff Mosher of Inside the Birds podcast? What did you make of the most recent reports about Jeffrey Lurie being even more meddling than the last report about him meddling? What did you make of him?
You and I are of the same age, so I can't. Sometimes I think of like the end of a Scooby-Doo episode, right, where they find the villain and they pull the mask off and unveil him, and he goes, "It wasn't for you meddling kids," right? Like I feel like everybody wants to tie Jeffrey to a chair right now, and and see if there's somebody else underneath there, because he wasn't always like this. I mean, he was always a very hands-on owner. That's the one thing you should know. We've had Joe Banner on our show many times on Inside the Birds, and he has said Jeffrey has always been involved in a way where you would want your owner involved. You want him to know what's going on. You want him to be informed. You appreciate that he has an influence on the organization. He takes care of people. But I know from just talking to people, Adam, same thing, what we reported over the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a difference. It has been more hands-on. Analytics has come and played a much bigger part of the organization. Now he has conversations with coaches, after games on analytics and things like that. And that can be interpreted as, hey, look, that's a good owner just trying to get answers to questions. But it could also be interpreted as very unique around the league. But we also know there's the draft and his involvement there, which almost unilaterally people will tell you, no, the owner should not be telling you who to pick and who not to pick. I feel like fans are trying to have their cake and eat it too. Like the ones who like Jalen Hurts are like, hey, I'm glad we have an owner that does what's in the best interest of our quarterback and our team because we get to go forward with Jalen Hurts. I'm like, well, you can't say that, but then be mad at him for the JJ Arcega-Whiteside. You can't have it both ways. It's either a bad and unsound philosophy, or it's a good one. And I think it's just a little bit too much heavy-handedness right now.
We had Hugh Douglas on, as we do every Tuesday, as we like to call it, Hugh's Day here on the show. Nice. See what we did there? But I had run the highlights, or at least some of the snippets of the story from theinquirer.com. Jeff McClain put the story out there. And I ran a couple of bits by Hugh Douglas, who played for Lurie for years in Philadelphia and was there through Ray Rhodes to Andy Reid. And Hugh just said, that doesn't sound like the guy that I played for. Like, if you're going to come talk to me about a bad play after a win, to hell with that. That's not something Jeffrey Lurie would do, at least not in his time. So my guess would be, because I believe the reports that are out there, my guess would be everything changed once Chip Kelly kind of made Jeffrey Lurie feel like he wasn't the owner anymore. That's where I feel things shifted for Lurie. Do you think he got even more aggressive after that point or kind of stayed about the same?
Well, I know that to your point, I mean, we'll never actually know unless he says it, right? But to your point and to what we hear, certainly when he made the move to fire Chip and, restore Howie, for him, it was a sense of, I need to get my franchise back in order, because he was unaware of a lot of things that were going on underneath his own nose at the time. And he felt after that he needed to be more aware, more hands-on, understandably. And again, it just seems like gradually, though, it's like he's pulling the rope a little closer to the point where now you're not just taking your franchise back, but you're exerting an influence on it that you haven't necessarily done before. And that's not really protocol with what's going on in the league. I mean, a lot of people in this town make fun of Jerry Jones for trying to be the owner and the GM, and the fact that they've made some bad decisions and not made the playoffs or won a playoff game or won a Super Bowl in the X amount of years. And you don't want the same situation here happening. The owner, in my opinion, and this is really opinion based on speaking with a lot of people around the league over the years, an owner should hire the right people in place so that when those people come and say, Mr. Lurie, this is what we want to do, it's easier for him to sign off, because you know what? I vetted these guys. I interviewed. I trust them. I don't have to make decisions for them. If the owner's making decisions now because he feels like the people underneath him aren't doing what he wants them to do, well, then he needs to change those people, which is what anybody would do. So that's how I feel about that. Yeah.
Geoff, when can we hear the great Geoff Mosher and the great Adam Kaplan on the latest Inside the Birds podcast?
Well, our next Inside the Birds podcast will drop Thursday at 6 a.m. We just did a live stream Tuesday night that is available on it's an Ask ITB where we answered our questions. It's available on our YouTube channel and our podcast platforms, and Q&A. Quentin Michael, Jason Avant. Let me just tell you, Marc, that show, it's already out. It's on our YouTube podcast platforms. They both went into their very unique experiences about being free agents. Now, remember, Quentin Michael came out of the lockout, the 2011 year. So he had to sign with somebody without meeting anybody, without knowing what the money was like. It was a very unique experience. And, of course, Jason Avant became a free agent after 1 year of playing for Chip Kelly. And you should definitely tune in to hear what he has to say about playing for Chip Kelly.
I remember when everything was going down, and I'm sure Jason's only got more interesting stories to tell since then. Awesome. Can't wait to check it out. Make sure you guys check out Inside the Birds podcast, available on all social media platforms, as well as InsideTheBirds.com. Geoff Mosher, thank you so much. Really appreciate you jumping on the line with us here on the Zados Investments guest line. Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. Thank you so much, brother.
See you.